All right, the dragon, also an old potter's tale. There's a couple of different ways that this story is typically translated, but our boy Ryunosuke Akutagawa is back on the table for discussion today.
The dragon. I like this story. It's fun, and it makes you think about what if it's a lie, or what if the lie is true?
There's no hiding it. This one is clearly aimed at the value, the importance, the veracity of belief and religion in our lives, right? Like that is definitely on the table for this story. Now, with that said, I was kind of thinking about that. And the way this story opens, right? It's a frame narrative, right? Like this, it's actually kind of interesting because the first few paragraphs are so wrapped up in this one character. Like everything revolves around this character. Like paragraph is just this one main character's speech and influence, right? And he's like, I need to hear a story told. So like the part that's framed is not even his. It's the old potter's tale that's kind of telling this story that I thought was kind of interesting. Any thoughts on why that is?
I think because the story itself, the main story, about Hananzo, is that how you say it? I don't know. I'm sorry.
I don't know I don't know if it's like a long Z or a short Z, but I say Hanazo.
Hanazo. So the main story about Hanazo has layers, and I think that is kind of maybe what Akutagawa was going for, of the like almost being meta. There's layers within layers within layers, because it felt like that the crux of the story for me was your physical appearance is important. We know that. We've seen that many times, the nose. And then I guess I would say almost like insincerity of religion for some people and how that drives their lives.
I guess, how do we break that down, right? Because for me, one of the layers was, I'm not saying he did, but it felt like there were elements of Pinocchio to it. Right, like he had the long nose, and if you didn't know, like the Hanazo, like Hana, I don't know what kanji was used in his name, but Hana means nose in Japanese. If you didn't know,
I did not know that.
Yeah, and he's got another story about the nose that we covered a while ago. But anyways,
I remember. Yeah,
you know, it's kind of, it's not so much the boy who cried wolf, but you see a man who's telling these lies, like trying to get a rise out of people. And then it turns into shame, right? Because his lie becomes reality, it becomes more than that. It becomes hope for some people, right? And I think he does feel a little bit of guilt, a little bit of bad for that, you know, to cut, I guess, what was his lie, right? So he puts up on this bulletin board that a dragon will rise from this pond, this lake, this body of water on March 3rd, right? And an old woman's even like, I don't know if I should believe you. I always believe priests, which I think is said a couple of times, which means I think we're supposed to key in on that, right? So it's like a man, a priest, a person of religion, we should always believe them is kind of her stance, right? Because her belief is that religion will always tell her the truth, and people of that religion are always striving to reach truth and tell the truth is kind of how I interpret it, at least her way of kind of like coming back to that.
So we have 2 points then to this story, right? We have the physical, I don't want to call it deformity, but we have the physicality of the story, and we have the religion of the story. And to your point, the animal that we're going with, the physical realm here, and you mentioned, is a dragon, but it's almost the big bad wolf. And the wolf isn't real. A cried wolf, cried wolf, cried wolf. And in this case, he cries dragon, cries dragon, cries dragon. And at the end of the story, the dragon does manifest. Spoilers. And so how does that dictate the reality of our lives? Well, our lives are dictated, not everybody, obviously. Many people's lives are dictated by religion. So through faith of religion, you can manifest reality. And that's kind of what I think, to me, happened in the story, is that through religion, we manifested the dragon.
I wonder, I might have had a different take. I actually am not sure that the dragon was there. I get what you're saying, but I almost wonder, right?
Okay.
So there's an element to the story that we got to talk about with prophecy, right? And I am not an expert on a lot of religions. Trust me, I'm not an expert on any religion. Let me start with that. But you have an interesting thing because Akutagawa was writing this in Taisho era Japan, right? So we've gone through a lot of invasions when it comes to external thought. Japan typically being this fortress that literally walled themselves off from trading in the rest of the world, right? That got opened. And,
right.
First Buddhism came in and we had more burial processes compared to the Shinto way of life. And then Christianity came in modern times. I don't know what it was like in Taisho era. Like now a lot of people get married Christian in Japan, buried in the Buddhist process, but live like a Shinto life. Like there's this melding of religions, if you will. So I kind of wonder, like, it's kind of unfair because you and I grew up in America, heavily Christian values, even when you look at like the Constitution, right? One people under God, stuff like that. And we both have talked before, we grew up Catholic, that like the Christian values were kind of ingrained to us at a very young age, right? Like we just don't know any other. Imagine this country of Japan that's never heard of Christianity, of Jesus, of outside religions, and they come in and they're like, hey, here's the truth, right? Here's this prophecy that came true after 2,000 years, et cetera, et cetera. You have to believe this. This is this book. You have to follow this in order to be saved. Imagine like how did that take off in Japan, right? Like it was definitely a rocky beginning. It definitely fought like, resistance when it came to the shores of Japan, but well before Taisho Akutagawa's time. But like, imagine like just that question of like, is there a chance that I should believe that? Like, could that be true? And how do you find that out, right? Like a lot of times you want that first person evidence. Like that's the only thing that makes some people believe, when they personally feel the miracle or something that draws them to a belief system, right? So all these people want to believe the dragon will rise and that it is real. Why? Right? Like how do they become believers of it? And they come and go on this pilgrimage because they have to almost have like an experience or firsthand knowledge of seeing that it's real.
Definitely open to interpretation of whether you believe the people saw the dragon or almost indulged the falsehood of the prophecy. But I think that the way that I kind of took it, and you talk about a lot of different points there, is that it's almost like Santa Claus. Believing is seeing, seeing is believing. And I think that many people in the world, they want a truth, or they want almost an assurance. And I think for some people, religion gives that to them. I think it's something that allows acceptance. That's not the right word, but it allows I don't know. It allows a vision of what we can aspire to. And the dragon is perfection, maybe, a mythical of what we hope to see in ourselves.
Yeah, I struggle with my thoughts because even the character of the aunt that comes to visit him, she says she needs to see that it's real because then she could die happy, something along those lines. I didn't grab the exact quote, but it's like, what does that mean that's the thing that would allow her to die happy, right? Like it's like that feeling of there's something beyond just what's in this world, of knowing that there's something greater than the turmoil and the suffering. Because we do know Akutagawa had a very negative view of how evil people were and how much suffering there was in life. The idea that it could be, in some religions, a test, a gauntlet to get to this eternal bliss, Like, that sounds a lot better to me than just dying and like my atoms return to the earth. Like, that sounds awful compared to this promise of like, well, hey, you could just live in a perfect world forever. And it's just like, oh man, that sounds amazing. Right. And
Right.
the dragon could be a fact, an evidence that if we do see this, that means it must be true and that eternal bliss is possible.
What do you think about the fact that all of this really stems from two things? Judgment of other people on Hananzo, of his physical appearance, that he feels so shamed by society that he has to tell a lie. And that all of this stems around judgment and a lie. It all comes because of that. And maybe that's what religion is trying to overcome, is people's insecurities and collectively taking society together to put forth something that can be better as a whole, of us people lifting each other up instead of tearing each other down.
It's all those layers that you were talking about earlier, because it starts out a lie. And what's interesting about this quote unquote lie is that if we say what is truth, the only person that knows the truth is Hanazo, right? Like, he knows that he completely fabricated this prophecy that everyone so desperately wants to believe, right? But that prophecy gets this circulation of coming true, like this critical mass that's pushing pilgrimages of nearby cities and villages of people that all want to believe together. And then something happens. Is to me, the way I personally interpreted it, maybe I'm a negative person, is that as a lightning bolt struck the water. Like, I don't have to explain that science to you, right? But the talons and like a long cylindrical dragon, that could be a blinding, very quick flash of the dragon to some people. This is kind of how I interpret it. And to your point, I think you mentioned when we first started talking about like this desire that if you want something so bad, sometimes you manifest it or make it happen or believe that it's happened. I kind of think that's what's happening here, is everybody wanted to see their version of the truth, whatever that may be, and the truth being verified through this dragon, a very sacred animal in Japan. And like, well, that long squiggly line, that flash of lightning, that unbelievably quick thing, that was the dragon, right? Like, it became real in that moment for many people because they manifested it, because they wanted to believe, because they wanted there to be evidence of truth out there, if you will.
So I guess it comes back to, what do you think Akutagawa's point of the story was? Because of these layers, the Potter is telling this story. What is he trying to convey? What is he trying to convince the chancellor, the counselor, or whatever of? What is his purpose that he is trying to persuade somebody of this story? What is its root meaning is kind of what I'm left kind of scratching my head out of, like, what is he trying to tell me here? Right.
Well, I guess I don't know the answer, right? Like, let me just start with that.
That's okay, right?
Well, isn't that the point of literature, to challenge us, unveil truths? Here's what's kind of interesting. Let's pretend this opening character who's so powerful, that dominates the narrative, is kind of like a all-knowing, omniscient being, if you will, to us as we enter the story, asks the lowly Potter for a narrative, a story, because he's going to write it down, right? That is a mini diagram of kind of what's happening in the story, of a story being told and it being written down and thus conveyed to other people. And those other people might take it as a truth. It might take it to mean something more important or fantastic than it actually was. It's kind of, there's a old Greek, I don't know, I can't remember who she was exactly. Her name was Cassandra, but she was like destined to always tell the truth, but no one believed her.
Oh, yeah, I know that story.
Yeah, so here you have Hanazo who's telling a lie, right? Everyone starts to believe it, and it hits this critical mass. And even when he's walking around like, hey guys, I made this all up, people are like, no, I saw the dragon. Like, their mind's already made up, right? And same thing with like this Potter that's telling the story to the omniscient, all-powerful being that dominates the narrative in the beginning. Like, we always have this choice as to what to believe. And I guess one of the things we need to start asking ourselves when we make a decision on these things is why? What is it that we're looking for? Just like that aunt who knew that if she knew the truth, she would die happy. If someone's telling us something, which in so much of life, and I mean, you know, as a historian, history is just a bunch of stories being told and documented in an attempt to being verified through secondary sources and such. It's sometimes hard to choose what to believe when we have so much thrown at us. And I think that's part of the struggle of life is sifting through all of these things that are being told to you, I think.
And I think there's a clue to the answer to that is who's chosen to tell the first story. Who's actually telling the story? The Potter, who is the oldest person. So I think it comes back to a lot of times we go to our elders because maybe they, quote, know the most, and they're the ones that we turn to lead us into the future because they have the wisdom we need.
And while I thought of that, you know what's so? Can I just make it more negative? I'm on a
Of
roll.
course,
with that.
yeah, I'm all for it.
That the old Potter didn't make that story up. It was told to him, right? In the same way that the old Potter is now passing down the story. So, how true can a fact be? Like, you've played the telephone game, right? Like, every time the story's told,
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
it gets exaggerated just a little bit more, changes
Embellished,
a little
changed.
bit more.
Oh, yeah.
So to your point, you said it's the old Potter story. To me, I don't think it is the old Potter story. He heard it. Like, this is a story that he knows. Like, someone else besides this, tell me a story, right? Like we're all passing down this information, and information can become unreliable the more it's told. I don't think that's necessarily correlated to religion. I think religion is obviously on the table of how do I choose to believe, what to believe. But I think, you know, part of that story of how information is passed down, it gets harder and harder to know how far away from the truth am I getting, which one is true. Like, belief is a very tricky subject, I think, and a very personal subject for many people too.
And just to bring it all back, you mentioned in the beginning, Pinocchio, truth, lies. It's all right there. Oh, It gives me goosebumps, man.
Yeah.
Akutagawa nailed it again, man. I love this story. It's so good. It's so good. Mixing
some Italian old fairy tale folklore with Greek, you know, the Cassandra, or with religion, with truth. It's fantastic. There's no secret on this channel that he's one of my top 5 favorite writers of all time. I love covering his stuff because... is he in your top 5 now too?
Yeah, probably. I mean, duh. Ooh,
right.
We should do a new video, top 5.
We should. Now, with that said, for all those people out there still who appreciate that, hit that like button and subscribe for me. We're going to leave a playlist of other Akutagawa talks down below. Let us know what you think of this story. I read all these comments. I do genuinely find interest when people share thoughts with us. So looking forward to hearing from you. We'll talk to you guys soon. My name's been Una. Peace.
Peace.